had a dream last night, took a time traveling ride back to my childhood where those monsters reside.
So, Lone Rider here, and I'm a huge X-Files fan, at least of the original series. Not so much the attempts to bring it back. And one of the things that was particularly horrendous about the 2016 so-called season 10 was how much they messed things up trying to appease people's political concerns, and then people's political concerns couldn't be appeased, and they got raked over the coals for it anyway. So they broke continuity, and they told a really crummy story in an attempt to try and mollify, anticipated objections, and it didn't work. My problem was that they literally bent over backwards to try and show that they weren't anti-Muslim, and in doing so, they threw Dana Scully under the bus. There's a scene in there where, let's go to the actual episode, and you can see what I'm talking about. So here's what happens in the episode. It opens with two young men walking into a building, and the building blows up. And you later find out they were suicide bombers, and one of them survived. And they're concerned that he may know of other attacks that are planned by whatever group he may have been part of, but they can't question him because he's severely injured from being in the building when it blew up. So the whole episode is them trying to figure out how to somehow connect with him and get in touch with any ideas he has. And there's various attempts to administer certain drugs to try and get a response, and Mulder even tries to take some magic mushrooms. A lot of silliness and a lot of stuff to criticize in the way the episode was written, but being anti-Muslim isn't one of them. So the plot of the episode revolved around a terrorist bombing. That's an actual thing. I hate to tell you. I mean, it happens. Obviously, not all Muslims are terrorists, but the point is, can we at least agree that we should be able to talk about issues like this without anybody's first reaction being, oh my God, you raised the issue of the fact that Muslim terrorists might exist. You must hate Muslims. How about you just talking about an issue of the day, or in this case, with the X-Files episode, using it for a fictional TV show as a plot subject. I mean, way back in the very first season of the X-Files, they had an episode that dealt with both logging and eco-terrorism. Nobody complained about that. Nobody said you're against environmentalism, or you're against logging. No, they were using this issue of the day, which at the time, back in the 90s, was very much an issue. And they were using it to tell a story. But they never hit anybody over the head with the politics one way or the other, and they were never accused of doing so. And you can look at the reaction to this episode. The reaction is as bad as the episode was. The episode has a lot of flaws, but Islamophobia, I'm sorry, is not one of them. In fact, if anything, the problem with this episode is that they bent over so far backwards to try and show that they weren't anti-Islamic, that they actually had more, if you want to talk about villains in the episode, they had more bigoted American characters in the episode than they had actual Muslim terrorists. I mean, what does that tell you? They definitely were not going for an anti-Muslim vibe in this episode. And more importantly, they were going so far out of their way to show that they weren't anti-Muslim that they actually basically threw Dana Scully's character under the bus. They had they had her issue this throwaway line of, well, not all Muslims are terrorists. Um, and the problem I have with having Dana Scully do that is we know how Dana Scully reacts to fundamentalist religion. Yes, she's Christian, and yes, she has her faith and then science on the other side, and that's part of what makes up the the various aspects of her character in the series. But as far as fundamentalist religion, she's dealt with it in the past. There was an episode earlier in the series that dealt with snake handling fundamentalist Christian church, and she made it very clear that she did not approve of this radical or fundamentalist religious belief. And same thing when the show's encountered other such beliefs. Dana Scully is a voice of reason and a voice of compassion and a voice of decency. She would not endorse fundamentalist religion at all. We know she hasn't in the past, so why would she defend it with respect to fundamentalist Islam? If you're going to pick a character to make this statement, you could pick another character, one that doesn't have a pre-existing view of the issue that's already been demonstrated numerous times over the previous 9 years. And then you have this. We also know where many Islamic societies stand on the treatment of women. And the issue is, in terms of basic human rights, not all that well. So it's kind of tone deaf to have a female medical doctor and law enforcement agent be the one to defend Islam when we know that in most societies where Islam is prominent or even the basis for the law of the land, she wouldn't be allowed to be either of those things. All right, Dana Scully in an Islamic country could not exist, generally speaking. Now, I don't understand how anybody could miss this. I don't understand how anybody, when they were writing the script, did they say to themselves, wait a minute, we're going to have Dana Scully be the one to defend Muslims? What's this going to sound like? Right? Like nobody realized that. I'm surprised. I'm really shocked at this. But I guess I shouldn't be. I mean, you look at how people reacted to the show, all the reactions to the show. Yes, some people talked about how poorly it was written or that some of the comedy was forced, etc. But most of them were focusing on the issue of, oh my God, the plot dealt with Islamic terrorism, so it must be Islamophobic. Since when did simply just talking about an issue of the day mean that you're a bigot? Seriously. Especially since they bent over so far backwards to show that they weren't bigoted. They actually threw one of the show's two main characters under the bus. I mean, this was a major break in continuity for Dana Scully, and basically was something that she would never do. I'm sorry. I don't care who you are or where you are. If you know anything about the X-Files and you know anything about Dana Scully's character, you certainly, if you're a fan of the show like me from way back, you know that Dana Scully would not be getting up there and defending fundamentalist religion, radical Islam. And since the issue was
large, unassimilated Muslim community in the area with one shared wish. One shared wish to what? To wipe you and America off the map. To honor their hero, Osama bin Laden, a picture we find all too frequently on their refrigerators. Muslims are extremists, certainly. Feel free to stay here and take it.
Whoa. Seriously?
There's a lot of things you can say about Dana Scully, but being a friend of fundamentalist religion isn't one of them. And the whole idea that if you're going to have any character throw out this sort of obligatory PC statement of, well, not all Muslims are terrorists. I mean, first of all, we know that. The context of the story in this fictional TV show is that there are two Muslims who happen to be terrorists, and maybe they have a friend or two who are also terrorists. It's not that every single Muslim in the world is a terrorist and these two are a stand-in for them. And if you can't see that, then you're pretty darn stupid. So the fact that they would even feel compelled to put sort of a PC disclaimer of, well, not all Muslims, you guys. The fact that they would even put that in there says something, pretty sad is going on, because It's insulting not only to Muslims, but it's insulting to the intelligence of their viewers. Hello, and then you have the fact that they picked Dana Scully to do it. Now, there's a lot of things we know about Dana Scully, but one of the things we do know is that she's a female law enforcement agent and she's a medical doctor. This is probably not the best person to endorse fundamentalist Islam or defend it in any way, given its treatment of women historically. And then we have the fact that one of the things that we do know about Dana Scully is she's encountered fundamentalist religion in the past, and she's always been very much against it. And, I'm not a big fan of the remake of the X-Files anyway, of the 2016 miniseries. I honestly, the original series was best, and they should have left it where it was and not tried to revive it. Like many other hardcore X-Files fans, I was really looking forward to this coming back. But I think in the back of my mind, I had this fear, could you produce a show like the X-Files today? A show that occasionally did touch on political or politicized issues, but never really tried to beat anybody over the head with politics. Again, remember the episode from the very first season of the X-Files, way back in the 1990s, Darkness Falls? This was an episode that dealt with both logging and eco-terrorism. And you know what? It did it without taking sides and without trying to sound preachy. Why? Because it just used it to tell a good story. In this case, they tried to use this to tell a story, but they seem to feel compelled to insert PC disclaimers here and there. And again, they erred tremendously in picking Dana Scully to do this. Dana Scully would never come to the defense of fundamentalist religion. I'm sorry. I don't care what religion it is or how PC it is to defend it. Dana Scully is not going to come to the defense of fundamentalist Islam. Just ain't going to happen. So, Chris Carter, you should have rewrote your script. I don't know what the heck you were thinking. And I don't know what the heck the people are thinking that are saying this episode is anti-Islam or Islamophobic. I mean, the whole idea that they went out of their way, they literally bent over backwards to basically have a pre-apology with their not all Muslim statement, even going so far as to break 9 years of continuity with who they had say it. Seriously, you basically destroyed the character of Dana Scully in order to utter this throwaway PC disclaimer, and they're saying that it's anti-Muslim, that it wasn't friendly enough to Muslims. They basically destroyed the integrity of one of the characters that made the show what it was, in order to literally utter a throwaway line that really, if it had to be said, could have come from any other character in the episode that didn't have a long-standing view on the issue. Again, they broke 9 years of continuity. They basically fractured Dana Scully's character in order to include this throwaway line. And it's like, wow, they really cared about being PC if they're going to do that. Or they just think all the fans are stupid and aren't going to notice that this is the one person on earth who is least likely to ever say anything to defend fundamentalist Islam. But they've gone so far out of their way to defend fundamentalist Islam, and yet the episode was anti-Islamic. Why? Because politics, I guess. It's almost like no matter what you do, somebody's going to be pissed at you. And I think it is funny that out of all the controversial and weird stuff the X-Files has dealt with, something as relatively mundane as the real-life issue of terrorism might be what convinces people that it stepped overboard. Here's one from the Huffington Post. The X-Files makes Islam the monster of the week. And this, I mean, you can see this is essentially the way they're treating the subject. They're not responding to was it a good episode? Was it a bad episode? Was it poorly written? Just the fact that you're actually dealing with the issue of Islamic terrorism. Oh my gosh, how horrible. Issues like this, issues like the subject of terrorism or extremist ideology or violence and beliefs that lead to violence, they're important issues in the real world. And I think it's telling when you can't even talk about them in the fictional world without somebody saying, just because you even brought up the issue, you must be fill in the blank with the bigotry of your choice, right? To me, this wasn't just a bad X-Files episode. This was sort of a cautionary tale on, where we're going as a society, that you can't even have a discussion, even when you make it so clear that you're not biased, that you actually throw one of your main characters under the bus, right? And have Dana Scully, of all people, defend fundamentalist religion. And you still get denounced as being biased just because you're even using the issue in the story you're trying to tell. If you can't even do a fictional television show that simply uses the issue of Islamic terrorism, which is a real life issue, as a plot point, without people jumping on you and saying you're a bigot and you're horrible and you're Islamophobic and all of that stuff, well, gosh, how are we going to even discuss serious issues like this in real life if you can't even use it as the topic for a weirdo sci-fi show? Seriously. Oh well, at least this episode gave us Mulder's drug trip, right? that was pretty bad, but it was entertaining in a childish way. Oh well, Lone Rider out.